Hello, this is Lady B, and this video is part 3 on my series on how to make your own masquerade masks. And this one is all about adding texture to your mask through the use of Mod Podge and Tacky glue. Now, because of the techniques used in this video, making this style of mask does take longer than the previous two styles. Normally those ones can be done in 3 days. This one takes a minimum of 4 days, 5 before you can use it. So it does take a little longer, but I think the results are just beautiful. Now, this is day 2. Yesterday, this mask and the other mask were primed with a white primer and allowed to dry. And then I have drawn a pattern on it, and you can see that. And it's really messy, and that's okay. I just used a pencil. If you've done, your coats of paint are thin enough and it's dried completely, you can actually erase this to fix any mistakes. What we want to do is we want to draw everywhere I have a line. We want to draw with the tacky glue, but we can't do it from the bottle because it will come out too thick. So we have 3 options of how to fix that. The first is the one I used, which is I went out and I bought myself one of these little bottles. Now, I couldn't find the bottle by itself. It's the kind they use for puff paint, and you look at it and it has this really small, see if you can see that, it's this teeny opening, and that's what you need in order to get the constant flow. And since I wasn't able to find one by itself, I went out and I found this instead, and this is fabric paint, and I emptied it, saved the paint in another container, cleaned it out, filled it with my tacky glue, and this is what I'm going to use. Another way to do it, which if you don't want to go to the trouble of finding one of these, you can take some tape, just Scotch tape, invisible tape, whatever it's called, and you take a piece of it and you take your bottle, and I would recommend a smaller bottle for this because it does get heavy after a while as you use it. But you take the tape and you create your own nozzle, and it will automatically do it if you just tape it onto the back top here, because you'll notice this is sloped. So by taping it onto the top and then just swirling it around there, it creates this nozzle. And this does work. It's not quite as consistent as this. This will get you the best results between the two. But if you don't want to buy one of these, you can do this with the tape. This is actually, if you go and look up the videos on how they do it, this is usually what they do. I like this better. If you want to be really precise and take your time in doing it, there is one more option, and that is to use toothpicks. Now, I've already tested this out with the toothpicks, and I did this mask with it already. And it does actually give you better control and more precision than using the squeezy tube. It also takes a lot longer, but it really does work. You would just put some of your tacky glue into your paint tray, like this, and just use a toothpick to dip it in and draw with. And you can also use that toothpick to change it, fix any mistakes. So just by squeezing, this beautiful line comes out, and you're just going to draw again where you did already, and it's that simple. That's day 2. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done, but the one thing to remember is do not go all the way to the edge. The reason is this mask is going to have a trim added to it. And you can see here, I've bought this really thin trim. And so we need to make sure and leave room around the outside of the mask for the trim. We also, because this is going on wet and it's going to be wet for a while, you need to have that edge glue free so that you can hold it while you are drawing with your tacky glue. Now, sometimes if you make a little swirl or something and it ends up too close to it, like this did, you go, oh darn it, I messed up. Well, it's fixable. For that, you need a toothpick. All you need to do to fix that is you come back in with a toothpick and you drag the toothpick through your glue and shape your glue with your toothpick. If you make a really big mistake, wipe it off and do it again. It's not going to hurt the mask to have it wiped off. Now, as you're putting this glue on, it's important that you work, well, first from the center, and then left to right if you're right-handed, or right to left if you're left-handed, and from top to bottom toward yourself. The reason being that you don't want to cross any lines you've already laid down. It increases your chances of making a mess. So anything I have over here on this side, I have to do first. Then I can come in and do the ones below them. And that's it. That took me maybe 5 minutes to actually draw on with the glue. So it doesn't take very long at all. So before I set this to dry, I'm going to go through and take off any places where I have too much glue and it's creating, so like here's another spot, if you can see it, there's this big bulb there, and I'll just take that off with my toothpick. This is really one of those things that is just so easy to do, because even if you make a mistake, it is so easy to fix, because you can just literally remove anything you don't like up to the point where it's dried. So I'm going to clean this up, and then I'm going to, like I said, I will set it aside to dry, and then I will prime it, and then tomorrow I'll be able to paint it. And it's day 3, and it's time to paint. Now, I have here my paints, 2 shades of blue, a white, and a sterling silver, my paint brushes, water cup, paper towel, and of course my paint palette. Now, I am very allergic to blue dyes, so I am also going to be putting on some gloves. Now, this has been primed over the glue and have been allowed to dry thoroughly. This is very important. You have to prime this because the paint does not like to stick to the glue, to the tacky glue that is making this raised surface. So once you make your patterns with your tacky glue, you must prime it. Wait for it to dry completely, and then we move on to this step. Now, the first thing I'm going to paint white on these lower cheek areas to about here. Now, yes, I have white primer and I'm now putting white paint on it, but the fact is this is going to take a couple of coats because we want a really nice solid white with nothing showing through. And I'm just going to keep doing this until I have probably 3 coats of this white on all these areas below this eye area. I'm going to put the dark blue, is that the dark blue? No, the dark blue on the rest of this. Getting some blue. And once again, I'm going to do at least 3 coats. I want to get it to where it is nice and even, because you can see how that's not, it's kind of splotchy. So by doing multiple thin coats, I will be able to get a solid coat. So that will be at least 3 coats. And that should do it. That is my 4th coat, and I am happy with how that's covering. So it's time to move on to the light blue. Now this light blue is going to go around the eyes and inside these details that we have created on this mask, where we have these enclosed loops. Okay, so there is 3 coats of my lighter blue. Now, the next step is to outline these lines with the white anywhere that it's been covered up. And for this, we want a finer brush. And it's really easy. It sounds like it'd be hard. We're just hitting the surface of anything that's raised. And this one isn't just these outlines of these larger spaces, it's anywhere that's raised up. And you're just hitting the top surface of it. So it's a lot easier than it sounds like it would be. Now, just like when you were putting the glue on, it's important as you paint this that you work from left to right if you're right-handed, or right to left if you're left-handed, and then from top then toward you. And again, the reason is you do not want to cross your hand over something you have already painted. So for example, I'm now at this point, I'm going to jump up to here and do this before I come back to this. And this is when your details really start to pop. So the last thing to paint is our metallic. So everywhere that I've painted that white, come back in and you paint with a metal. The reason we painted the white in the first place is because your metallics are not solid. They're a little transparent, and by painting that white under it, it really helps them pop. Now I'm going to give this a few minutes to dry, and then it's time to break out the Mod Podge. So this is dried and cleaned up, and we have here both of the masks. This is the one I've been working on, and then this is the one where I drew on it with the toothpicks. And I had painted this one already, and you can see I've done a gradient here where it goes darker to lighter, and I showed how to do that kind of paint job in the previous video. And we have this one in the blue and white and silver, and this in maroon to pink with gold. So like I said, it's time for the Mod Podge, which we have right here. And there are 2 techniques that I'm going to show you for finishing off these masks, which is why we have 2 masks. I'm going to start with the blue one. Now, I have here a whole bunch of little pieces of paper I've just torn up. I've just taken a piece of paper and I've just torn it up into little teeny pieces. And what we're going to do, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a brush and we're going to paint the Mod Podge in these medium blue areas, right? Then I'm going to pick up one of my little pieces of paper and I just tap it with my brush and it just picks it right up. And I'm going to put it inside and then paint over the top. And the effect I'm trying to get with this mask is kind of reminiscent of like water and beach and stuff. And so I think, personally, I think that breaking it up, and it's going to look better in these larger areas, but breaking up this blue with these, I think makes it look kind of like little stones on the beach. At least that's what they make me think of. And there we go. That's the last one. It does take a little time, but it's really easy, and if they're in the wrong place, you can just use the other end of your brush to move it. Just keep the end clean or it will start sticking to it. And that one is ready to be sealed now tonight, and tomorrow we line the back and add the trim around the outside. So now for 2, glitter. My plan is, just as I have painted this in a gradation from dark to light, I am going to put the colors on also from dark to light. Putting it on is very, very, very simple. I take my Mod Podge, I paint it on, and you'll notice I have this on a piece of paper. And the reason for that is I'm going to take my sparkly stuff and sprinkle it on, and then I tap it to get any excess off, and have a separate brush and brush off anything that is not where it's supposed to be. This is a clean brush. It's just a dry brush. There we go. Now the thing to remember with doing this is it will stick wherever you put the Mod Podge. So it's important that you be precise. There, switching to a smaller brush for my corner work. Now this is why I'm going to show you why I have the paper down here. So I'm going to open it all the way because it has this lid, should just pop off. And now I can take my paper and use it to put the glitter back in. So where normally I would have a lot that gets thrown away, this one I don't. So turning it over so it's fresh. And now it's time for this one here and around the eyes. And I'm washing off my brush in between every one so that the Mod Podge doesn't stop it up. And that's it. This one's finished with all the glitter. And we have this one with our little pebble effect. Now I'm going to take my dry brush and try and get any other glitter I've missed off of this that isn't where it's supposed to be. And then as soon as the Mod Podges on both of these have dried, I will spray seal these tonight, and tomorrow we'll be ready for day 4, finishing off the masks. Welcome to day 4. So these were sealed last night with the matte clear acrylic, and before they were sealed they were painted on the back. And the next step after this is to put felt lining on the back. This is what will go next to your skin. So whatever felt you buy, it needs to be soft. Now because of the embossing, normally I just do it on a surface like this, but because of the embossing I'm actually going to lay down a piece of felt to protect the mask, because I have to place it upside down. And I've already shown you how to do this in my other mat tutorials, but we're going to cover it really quick just in case you haven't seen them. Now here's one I have already, the blue one I have already put the back on. And you can see here how with it being a white felt, you have these rings around it. Now it's important that you paint around these edges because it helps protect the paper of the mask. And as we put this and we put this felt on and we line it, we're also going to be sealing that paint on the back with the Mod Podge that we're going to be using to attach the felt, and that will also protect it. But it can give you this ring effect, and if that bothers you, pick a color and paint the whole back the way I did here. There's still some ringing, but it's not as much. So we're going to do this to this one. The first step is to use Mod Podge. You want a sponge brush for this, and you're going to put the Mod Podge with the sponge brush very quickly and in a thin, even layer across the top here. And you want to make sure, as you do that, that you do not come all the way up to the edge of either the eye holes or the edge of the mask. But you do make sure that it covers everything. So I've put that on the top there. I'm going to take my piece of fabric, and this is cut about 1 inch larger than the mask. And that's important because there's a fold thing you have to do. But right now you fold it in half like this, and then you place it just far enough that it will cover the top. Put it in the middle and smooth it down to either side where that glue is. And then working quickly, you fold it up back to wherever the glue is that you put on it, because you want to make sure and overlap this. And you're going to do it again. Now, this time when you fold it down, you're going to create a crease in the middle, right here where the eyes are. And then you're going to smooth it on the sides first. First this side toward the nose so that it lays flat, and then this side towards the nose so that it lays flat. And if you have to, hook your finger up inside that eye to get that bump where it's supposed to be. And if you didn't make the bump big enough, it won't want to lie flat at the nose. So if that's the case, like it was here, I'm just going to pinch that and pull it up a little more and then smooth it flat. And the advantage of having this really thin felt is that it's more flexible and you can get it to do this. So that is now flat with that one little fold in the middle. So the next step is to cut off the excess around the outside. So for that we need sewing scissors. And this is the reason that we left it unglued to the edge. You can fold it over, see where that edge is, and cut it along the edge. And this gives you that room to get your scissors in. Once you have the outside cut out, it's time to cut the eyes. And the first thing you do to cut out the eyes, of course, is to snip a hole. But we're going to cut along this line here that goes across the bridge of the nose. And once that's been cut, then we cut the eye holes out starting from the corners. We want to, this corner here, right there, it's the easiest place to cut from. So you start where the cut across the nose is, cut down to the corner, and then you cut out the rest of the eye. And then once the eyes are cut out, the last thing you're going to do is cut out this little extra right here in the middle. So you cut the bottom part first, cutting through the eye holes. You just cut straight across on the bottom. And then once you have that cut, you cut the top one, but you cut it so that it overlaps just a little. And that is that cut out. So the next step will be to go in with the Mod Podge and a brush and glue down all the edges that you left unglued, as well as sealing all the way to the edges of the mask. Now, the kind of brush you want is this, and it's a flat brush. See if you can see it better that way. You can see how it's skinny and flat, and the reason for that is that will enable you to get underneath the fabric as you tack it down. I am just going to dip my brush in that and then hold back. You can see I've folded back the areas where it doesn't have it. Oh, on it. And see, get this where you can see. And that brush just goes right in that area. And you want it to go all the way under anywhere that it hasn't sealed, and all the way to the edge. Any of the paint that is not sealed already will be sealing now with this Mod Podge. And you just keep doing that, smoothing it down after you've put the glue on for the entire mask. The next step is to, as soon as that dries, we want to put the elastic on. Now there's two things we'll be doing before it will be finished. One will be the elastic. That's this right here. And these come with the masks. And then the other thing is we'll be adding trim. I have this trim here for my blue mask. And I have this trim here for the gold mask. And I showed you this one earlier. And there's two ways to do this. You can put the trim on now and then tie the elastic on over it, because in this particular mask, the elastic ties on from the side. Not all masks are like this. Some of them actually have it where the elastic attaches in the back, and then you have to worry about cutting around when you add your lining on the back to make sure that you don't cover up that elastic entirely. Or sometimes if you have one where the elastic attaches on the back, they'll just put the lining right over it, and it just comes out the side with the felt covering it all the way up to the edge. Either way, this one, the elastic goes through this way. So the other option is to put the elastic on now, and then when I put the trim on, put it over the elastic where it's tied on. And that is what I'm going to do. So what order you do this in depends on you, but I am choosing to do this order. So, putting the elastic on. Very simple. You need either a toothpick, or I like to use, it's a little wood skewer for shish kebab. Whatever you use, it just has to be the right size to go through the holes. And we're going to poke a hole through the felt from the side where the felt is, through that hole, in order to make a hole in the felt to reopen that hole. Like that. So now we have the holes back open. Let's see if you can see that. Ta-da! And now we take the side of the skewer that does not have a point, and from the other side we want to push the elastic through the hole. And sometimes this works really easily, and sometimes you have to get pliers involved. It depends on whether in the process of painting you have closed up that hole at all. This one did not. And then once that is through the hole, you're going to tie a square knot in the end. And the square knot will both make sure that it won't come undone, and we'll get the end of the elastic pointing inward instead of outward. Very, very important. Like that. I'm going to smooth that across to the other side so to make sure that we haven't twisted it, and do the same thing on the opposite side. And that is now tied on. Now, if I was not putting trim on this, this would be a finished mask. But this is the point, either before or after putting on the elastic, that you can add any flourishes. accents, finishing touches, however you want to, whatever you want to call them. And we will be adding the trim. So it is time to put this on. Now, there's a couple of ways to do it, but I am using Tacky glue. I've cut my trim to the length that will go from corner to corner. And I am now putting 2 very thin coats of the Tacky glue on it. And I'm doing that by applying a really thin line and then using my brush to spread it just along the edge. And I'm not going over the elastic, I'm going around the elastic. The key here is these thin coats. I've already put a thin coat on this trim, and now I let both of those dry for just a couple of minutes and then stick them together. It's been a couple minutes and it's sticky but not dry. So now I'm going to, starting on one end, going to stick this on like that. And that's the bottom. And I'm going to repeat that for the top. Before I put the top one on, I'm going to take a moment to cut off these little bits. When you cut this kind of ribbon and this kind of trim, you have to tape it and then cut through the tape or it unravels. But now that it has glue on it, it should stay. So I'm just going to trim that off right there. And trim that to the mask. And now I can put the next one on. Once again, we have this tape at the end. Like I said, you have to tape it and then cut through the middle. So that tape is where I'm going to overhang that because that is not staying. So when you measure this, you make sure you have a little extra as well as the part that is taped, just to be sure. And I will let that sit for a few minutes and then I will cut the tape off these ends too. So I'm going to show you how to actually measure this. So I have here my trim and it has the tape on the end. So I'm going to literally, overlapping that, just follow my edge. And then when I get to this end, I now want to tape this past the mask, past the end of the mask. So I get a piece of tape, and it's just, again, it's this invisible tape or Scotch tape, or whatever it's called where you live, and giving it a little extra space. I just wrap that around and cut right through the middle of it. And that's how you keep it from unraveling. So that's the top piece. And now I will measure the bottom piece. Okay, so I'm going to cut off the ends of this very carefully. Now it won't unravel right away because it had the glue on the back. But just to be sure, I'm going to drop a drop of glue on the end and use my brush to work it in to the very end there, and that will just finish securing it. And we'll do the same thing for the other side. Now technically these are finished. We have the blue one and the rose one. Technically they're finished, but this glue that's been used to attach this needs to cure for 24 hours. So while you can finish them on day 4, you can't wear them until day 5. So I'll see you then. It's day 5 and they're finished. They're dried and they're ready to wear. Here's the blue one and here's the rose one. And that's how it's done. Adding texture with Mod Podge and Tacky glue and embossing with Tacky glue to create a carnival style mask. And I think they're just lovely. Just beautiful. And this was supposed to be the end of my series, part 3, on how to make masks. But I've run into another style, and if I can get it to work, there just might be a part 4. But in the meantime, that's it. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. It's Lady B signing off. See you then.